It's the 21st century, and it's time for you to break free from the old ideas, the old beliefs, the old shackles that have been holding you back and keeping you bound in misery and failure. It's time to learn the truth about your power and about what's really going on in the world. Everything that you see and experience is a reflection of what's going on inside of you. Nothing more, but nothing less. Learn the truth. Change your life. Change the planet. Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reality Changer Radio. I'm your host, Dickey, and tonight we're going to get on a different topic, but it also has to do with manifesting and changing the way we live our lives for the better. The title of this is, What Will You Do? And as you probably could tell by the description, but I'll also explain it here, what I mean by what will you do is what will you do with the rest of your life? What will you do? The rest of your life. Let's say today starts the rest of your life, and you start from a clean slate, and wherever you were yesterday or the day before doesn't matter. And today, everything is open. Everything is a possibility. This is one of the things that we understand as we get deeper and deeper into spiritual evolution, is that every day is an opportunity to do something that we've never done before. And as we grow and expand our awareness of what life is really like and not what we've been programmed to believe it's like, we understand that there are only limits in our mind. There are no real limits other than the ones we place upon ourselves. So today is the first day of the rest of your life. I know it sounds cliche, but it works for the show. So what are you going to do? What will you do for the rest of your life? Will you plan to travel every year? Will you build a business? Will you become a millionaire? Will you race cars? Will you climb mountains? And don't scoff at all this. And really what I'm talking to is I'm talking to the people that are pushing 40 and everyone else also. But think about it. Once you know that the limits are placed upon you by you, then what are you going to do with that information? Are you just going to sit around and go, yeah, well, I'm pretty awful to myself, I don't let myself do this and I don't let myself do that, and I kind of keep myself in a box, and it's comfortable and it's easy, and I'm probably going to die at an early age, and I won't be able to. What the hell? What is all that crap about? But you see, there's people out there every day that do that exact thing. They buy into the old school programming where, worry about Social Security because it's not going to be there when you retire. Well, guess what, folks? I got an FYI for you. If you're here in the United States and you ever worried about Social Security, you're worrying about something non-existent. Okay? There's a lot of people out there that are collecting Social Security benefits, but the bottom line is it's not enough to feed them. It's not enough to take care of their medical expenses that they've been programmed to believe they should have because they're older. Did anybody get what I just said? It's not enough. Okay? There's more, but that's not it. And those poor people are still living their age as they were programmed it would look like. And I mentioned this on another show about a movie I saw not too long ago that was made in the 50s, and it was a maybe a C plus, not even a B, monster movie. And the whole deal was this woman was taking care of her uncle. She lived with her uncle, her poor old decrepit 57-year-old uncle. Let that weigh in on you for a minute, because this is exactly where the mentality was back then. In the 50s, you were going to retire at 65 if you could make it to 65. They portrayed this guy, who just happens to be the same age I turned back in March, as this doddering old fool who had this experiment, but he was frail. He wasn't frail. He had some meat on his bones, but he acted like a frail, scared, I don't know, what you would expect to be an old man that's withering away and dying in a home. Okay? That's how he acted, all right? But the whole thing, like even some of the script was based around, oh, be kind to him, he's 57. I remember that exactly. That's how I know how old he was. He's an old man. Enough with that crap already. There are people out there right now that have had the old school programming, that didn't believe the old school programming, like myself, that have made changes. Okay? They've made changes. I celebrated my 50th birthday by getting into an official submission wrestling match against a 40-year-old. No, wait, was he 35? I think he was 35, and I almost beat him, okay? Now, that's not the biggest deal in the world, but think about that for a minute. In the 50s, that would have been unheard of. All right? Now, think about this for a minute. You have a whole lot of time ahead of you. What are you going to do with it? And I don't want to put any fear or angst or intrepidation into your mind, but what are you going to do? Are you just going to sit around and just do what you did for the last 6 years? Are you going to just succumb to the whole, well, I'm going to have to retire at some point? Why would you have to retire? Listen, we can control the molecular structure of our body. I've already proved it. Scientists have already proved it. You want instant proof? Just think of placebo drugs. Okay? There's more. There's a lot more proof out there of what's actually going on in that whole process. But let's not escape the process. We are using our minds, our belief systems, to change our bodies. Okay? Now, with that said, understand that the body, as I've mentioned before, is designed to heal itself, no matter what happens. Okay? So, you get those two factors involved, and so what else is going on? Okay, so now, well, you say, all right, so I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s, and I'm way overweight. All right, fine. If you take care of yourself and you start expanding your awareness about what your mind can really do and what you can really do with the power God gave you, you're looking at another 50 years. And I'm not joking. You do your own research, but there's people are living longer and longer and longer and longer. What are you going to do with that time? Okay, so let's say, well, I'm going to retire at 65. Okay, what are you going to do then? You got another 30 or 40 years going on. What are you going to do? Listen, I'm not talking about planning it in details, and I'm not talking about, well, I'll do whatever. I'm talking about change. I'm talking about doing stuff that you were either afraid of or didn't have time for because of the way you were living your life. And now old school programming would make you believe that it's too late, you're too old, you're too fat, you've got too much responsibility, there's not enough time left, yada, yada, yada. Okay? That's all crap. It's all crap, It's all so much crap. It's just as much crap as anything that smells bad. It's just crap. So now what are you going to do? You're not sure? Okay. Well, how about I give you some stats here of some older people who have discovered that they want to do stuff, okay? And they have fun. How about Sally? Sally went to a surfing camp in Del Mar. She's 80 years old. There's a picture of her on the web, and she's rocking it on that board. Not what you would think. Okay? She's down in a squat, and she's hanging 10, and she's just cruising through that curl. 80 years old. Okay? Now, let's jump it a little bit. Let's go out of the box here. What are you going to do? What will you do when you're 100? What will you do? Will you celebrate your birthday with some 3 candles on the cake and, take your cane and walk over to the table while your family and friends, what's left of them, celebrate the fact that you've lived so long and how awesome is that you've lived so long and all this? Or are you going to be like Lou Battori, who started downhill racing, skiing, downhill racing in his 80s and is still doing it today, and he's 100 years old? Which birthday would you rather have at 100 years old? The one with the cane or the one with the skis? Now, you don't have to ski, but I'm using this as an example. You've got to get out of your box when you're thinking about yourself and your future. What about Frank Cordy? He's 72. He demolished a 30-something guy who attacked him with a knife. In fact, when the police got there, they thought that Cordy started the whole thing. That's how bad the guy looked. Look him up. There's pictures on the internet. Wow. 72 years old, okay? Let's go up again. How about Charles Oogster? He's a bodybuilder, okay? He's been doing it for a while. Guess how old he is? He's 93. He's a 93-year-old bodybuilder. Is he sitting around waiting for his Social Security check to come? I don't think so. Is he sitting around worrying about how many candles are going to be on the cake at his next birthday? Well, he might sometimes, but I'm sure he's going to put 94 of them on there. Let's go back down a little bit, okay? And let's say John Williams, 70 years old, okay? 70 years old, and he was in an MMA fight, okay? He submitted the guy in the second round, okay? So we go from surfing to downhill slalom racing to beating up a knife attacker, winning in an MMA fight, being a 93-year-old bodybuilder. What will you do? This is your wake-up call, folks. What will your legacy be for you? And you do it only for you. You don't do it for your family. You don't do it for your friends. You don't do it for a TV show that wants to highlight what you did when you're 100. You do it for you because you want to. My job is to make you aware that you can still do it no matter how old you are. There's not a thing such as not enough time or it's too late. That doesn't exist. Okay? Now then, let's go here. Let's go out of the box. You say, okay, yeah, you could do that, you could do that. You ever think of mountain climbing? Ever think of climbing Mount Everest? Well, Yushiro Muria, I think that's his name, and Yushiro, I apologize if you're listening and I mispronounced it. My Japanese is a little rusty. 80 years old, and he climbed Mount Everest. 80 years old. What will you do? What will you do? Will you sit around imagining the rest of your life? Now, you know I'm a big fan of imagination because that's one of the key elements of manifesting. Your visualization. But when are you going to take action? Because you need to take action along with all the other stuff. It's the triple component. You visualize it, you make it happen, and you act upon it to seal the deal. What are you going to do? All right, so let's say you're not athletic. Maybe you want to start a business. Write a book. What about Ben Franklin? You say, what about Ben Franklin? He invented bifocals at 76 years old. What will you do? More and more, as the shift has taken hold of people, and as people are more and more becoming aware of their spiritual power and their spiritual destiny, it's overflowing into so many areas, it's unbelievable. But even back in the 1700s, Ben Franklin was like, yeah, I'm still alive. I got stuff to do. What will you do? What will your mantra be when you're 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110? Will you still have stuff to do? Or will you be like one of those guys that checks out in the middle of the night? And people will go, well, you know, he's pretty old. We kind of expected it. That's crap. Nobody should be expecting anybody to do anything other than do what they want. When you start going off about how you say, well, that was to be expected, guess what? You just put a limit on yourself. That's right, you did. Because every time that you agree with a lack or a limit, you are instilling it into your own belief system. Now, this is very powerful for you to understand, so I'm going to say it again slower. Every time that you agree with a lack of something, that there is actually a lack of something, or that there is a limit to something, every time you agree, you are instilling that lack or limit into your own reality. Because everything that happens to us is because of us. So if you've got prosperity, it's because of you. If you've got poverty, it's because of you. If you've got health, it's because of you. If you are unhealthy, it is because of you and nobody else. So what will you do? Will you start a business? Will you invent something? Will you become a millionaire? I've decided that I now want to become a millionaire. So the other day I started investing. I'm also taking personal classes from Harv Eker to be a spiritual millionaire. What will you do? What? There's a million different things to do out there, and there's a million different ways to do them. But there's also a million different excuses you can come up with that a whole lot of people will go, oh yeah, I get it. Don't worry about it. That's crap. There shouldn't be any more excuses. It's one thing to sit there and say, I don't want to. Okay? But understand why you don't want to. And make sure you're coming from the right place when you say, I don't want to. Don't let that place be anything that has to do with fear or worry or concern. Let it be a solid decision based on facts or likes. You know, it's like, well, I could watch this show or I could watch that show. Well, I don't like that show, so I'm not going to watch that show. Okay? That is a legitimate reason not to watch that show. I'm going to watch this show because I like this show. That is a legitimate reason to watch this show. But if I say I'm going to watch this show because I'm afraid I won't be able to later, that's a wrong decision. Sorry, that's not the way you should be handling things. I'm going to watch this show because I'm going to watch this show. To say that I might not be able to watch it later, you've already built in a lack of availability for the show for you. And I know that sounds a little strange, and I know it sounds a little humorous, but it goes that deep. It really, really goes that deep. Everything that you emit your energy onto by speaking and acting and feeling and thinking creates a thing in your reality. That's how powerful we are, folks. That's why I tell you, watch your mouth. Watch the things that you say about yourself. Make that a daily habit. What will you do? Here's something for you to do. Maybe you need some suggestions. Here's one. Stop talking negatively about yourself. If you can do that, just that alone, your life will be changed. But how many times do we come up and go, oh man, I was so stupid yesterday? Really? Really? Why is it that we would rather demean ourselves as an excuse for what we did instead of saying the real thing? I forgot. I was going to do this and I forgot. But most of us, because we were told that, if you don't do the right thing, there's something wrong with you, that stays with you. And I wish it didn't. And I wish I had a magic wand where I could take all of that negativity away from each and every person so that there would never be that problem anymore. But I don't have one. The best I can do is to explain to you how to take it out of yourself. Use your words carefully. And don't put meaning behind. Look, there's nothing wrong with joking around like, oh boy, was I a tardo. There's nothing wrong with joking around like that. But don't get serious about it. Don't sit there and dwell on it, because that's going to be instilled in your belief system. You can joke around all you want as long as there's no real intent behind the words. And I don't care what you're saying, F this or F that. Hey, as long as you're joking, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really have any energy. It's when you're serious and you mean it and you dwell on it and you let it get to you. That's when it's instilled into your reality. Okay? It's not what you want. So what will you do? Will you invent stuff? I'm curious. I want everybody who listens to this to send me in email one thing, or make a comment on the show, one thing that you're going to do that you've never done before. It could be something simple. It could be as simple as taking a surfing lesson or hiking a trail or just going out on a paddle boat for a weekend. Do something different. Do something that makes you happy. That's the biggest thing. Make sure that what you're doing makes you happy. And listen, for all you entrepreneurs out there who need another business, don't do it if it's not making you happy. I know, as an entrepreneur, I know what the struggles are. And I know where you can have those down moments. And seriously, if you can just get away from that, just don't do it. Okay, if it starts to bother you, just bail it and go somewhere else. Because there's always enough. There's no lack. There's always another business to be started. There's always another widget to be invented. You guys ever watch Shark Tank? Watch Shark Tank. You'll see all these amazing things people are inventing and coming up with ideas about. But there's no limit to that. There's no lack of imagination and invention. None at all. Listen, there's a million things going on out there. What will you do? What will you do for you? Will you join a gym and get healthier? Will you do your daily meditations to change your day? Will you what? Will you go race car driving? Oh, that's too dangerous. Oh, really? Is that why it's been around for like, I don't know how long? How many years? 100 years? Something like that? Okay? Not everybody died. Trust me, if it was that dangerous, they'd have stopped it. What will you do? Okay? Now let's go out of the box with what will you do. Since America and the whole world seems to be legalizing pot, will you be a pot farmer? Will you have growing warehouses? Be a billionaire tycoon selling pot? Who knows? There's no limits and there's no right and wrong. It's all for you to say about you. What will you do? Will you sit in a corner of your kitchen and waste away because you feel hopeless? Will you pick up the phone and call me if you feel hopeless? Will you email me if you feel hopeless? Because if you do any of those when you feel hopeless, there's only one of them that's not going to work, and that's sitting in the kitchen wasting away. Are you going to sit on your couch for the rest of your life and eat potato chips and play video games? You could. Is that going to make you happy? If it does, go for it. Like I said, there's no right or wrong here. What's important is whether or not you're happy and whether or not your long-term goals are happy. But remember, listen, live every day like it's your last and plan the rest of your life as if there's no limits at all. Okay? What will you do? I'm finishing up my first book. I've got another book in the works. What will you do? What about Sally? She's 80 years old. How many curls is she going to shoot? And what about Charles, the 93-year-old bodybuilder? How many competitions is he going to get into? Do you think any of these people, when they were in their 20s and 30s, thought about this? I don't think so. But everybody's thinking about it now. Because there's a lot of scary things out there that we've been programmed to believe are scary, which is why I mentioned the scary. But stuff like, drugs are killing you, pharmaceuticals, please. It's like committing suicide when you take the pharmaceuticals. We all know that. Let's get real. So older people who have been hooked on the whole pharmaceutical deal to heal their wounds and to heal their ailments, even though they could do it themselves, they're getting a raw deal. And then they go into a home, and then that's a raw deal because for the same reason that I had to take my dad out of a home. Okay? Nobody should be in a home. Those things are retarded, and they don't care. And I personally almost had to beat up the guy because he tried to stop me from taking my dad home. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Okay? Within a week and a half, my dad got better. Ha ha ha. Think about that for a minute. So what will you do? What will you do when you're old enough to be put in a home? Will you go? Will you change your mind and do something? Will you commit suicide? Will you go to another country and change your citizenship? What will you do? Whatever you do, whatever you decide to end up doing with the rest of your life, which, well, for me is another 50 years. All right? So now think about it. Whatever you do, think about it and just make sure you have fun. And when you're not sure and you're like, oh, I don't know, man, it's not a lot of time, think about how much time you wasted. Think about how much time since you were born that you haven't done stuff. I mean, seriously, like if you went through all of school, right, like all 12 grades, chances are you didn't have a full-time job, okay? So now you're 18. There's 18 of your, let's say you're 50 now. There's 18 of your 50 years. So for 32 years, you did what? Well, I got this career. Oh, yeah, really? How long you been there? 19 years. Okay, so, all right, so 32 minus 19, there's a whole lot of years there you didn't do nothing. Warren Buffett says if you had $40 back in the day, you'd be a millionaire right now. So what will you do? Will you start in? I bought some stock the other day, okay, because, well, actually I didn't buy it. My wife bought it. But it's to start building our nest egg, right? We've had stock in the past, but now it's like we're getting serious, okay? But, and 2 or 3 shares of this, 2 or 3 shares of that, because, the really good stuff is kind of expensive, okay? But what will you do? What will you do? Jump out of the box. Get out of the box. Think differently. If you ever envisioned yourself as someone who would do this and do that, go do it. Just do it. Like the Nike ad, just do it. Okay? So seriously, everybody listening to this, come up with one thing that you're going to be doing in the next 30, 40, 50 years, okay, that you've never done before and that you wouldn't, when you were younger, you wouldn't imagine yourself doing at that age. How about that one? Ha! Okay? So send that to me in email, realitychanger57@gmail.com, or put a comment on the Spreaker site. Okay? This is my one thing. All right? And let's see what happens, okay? We've got a whole lot of years ahead of us. We got a whole lot of time to do a whole lot of things. There's people out there becoming millionaires in 2 to 5 years. Okay? Well, if you got 50 years ahead of you, what are you doing? Right? Exactly. So go out there and shoot the moon. Get out of your box. And I need to know, what will you do? Until next time, I want everybody to have an awesome life. I love all of you. I send love from my soul to you. God bless each and every one of you. Until next time.